Greetings, I'm Kamson, and I am going to be sharing with you a transmission that I'm receiving for those who are going through the ascension process. Usually I follow a content calendar, and the goal is to bring content every week, oftentimes tri-weekly, 3 times throughout the week, if not more. And I've been doing this on several platforms. I'm pulling away from doing that as much so that I can ensure the quality of the messages that I am sharing with you all. Today, I'm going to be talking about the ghost that a lot of us are experiencing and reliving. Now, when I say ghost, I'm more so speaking of the unspoken pacts that certain thought patterns have created. I'm speaking of the things that we have said in the moment of an intense emotional reaction to being triggered. I'm speaking of the things that was said to us that most likely we don't remember, but it was recorded within our subconscious mind. I'm also speaking of this new technology that is in the air all the time. Even if you cut your devices off in your home, it minimizes some of the energy that is around you. But this is new for us on this planet. And I believe that this has an impact on our mental activity, our emotional reactivity, and the patterns that are showing up. It seems as if the low megahertz waves sometimes put us into a delta state of mind, which is highly programmable. And we become more sensitive. And for those of us who have complex PTSD, post-traumatic slave syndrome, genetic trauma throughout our lineages based on epigenetics, which is the cellular recording of experiences, and this bypasses the mind. So oftentimes we're not conscious of the web that is created within us. I also speak of the way that we are designed and created based on the planetary imprint when our soul incarnated into a body. So all of these things, combined with now having the technology to actually open doors to parallel realities, we are experiencing something that is very unique. And some of these things can be perceived as negative and lead to feeling like a victim to these things occurring. However, my goal is to take the things that seem to victimize us and find the way to turn that specific observation into something that is beneficial for our evolution, which is what I call the spiritual ascension process. So I have been leading a sacred sister circle, and a lot of the techniques that I have shared over the course of the last 8 to 9 years, I've been creating programs with these techniques for others to follow who are desiring to go deeper into their healing journey and have spiritual routines that create psychic protection, that allow you to create new timelines of experiences. And these new timelines are created based on where we invest our energy. Due to the ethereal activity increasing of the blood within us, due to the solar activations our DNA is receiving, due to the contract that many of us have to come here to have this specific incarnation for the purpose of changing the trajectory of humanity. I know it sounds big, doesn't it? But these things actually put a target on your back, which means there will be forces and energies that will try to push against you accomplishing certain things. And there are also energies that are supportive of what you are here to do. So by studying the subconscious mind, studying many psychological teachings, spiritual systems, numerology, metaphysics, astrology, specifically, I've been delving into the Akashic records and the human design so that I can create a template for individuals to have a specific blueprint as to who they authentically are, how they manifest best, what environments best suit them and which environments do not, and which chakras are actually assisting them in this lifetime, because it's different for everybody. When you study these different modalities and sciences and you overlay them to your own experience, you then take what could have been a prison planet and you turn it into a prison breakout. And ultimately, this is the way we are unraveling the programming within our subconscious mind of the 3D matrix. Now, with this being said, we went into a new level of activations that I experienced during the eclipse. And if you all remember, if you're not new, you know that I uploaded 2 transmissions about the eclipse and what to expect. And that's unusual. I try to do one for any event that is really speaking to me. Since doing that, I have had so many fears come to the surface. And I'm finding myself having a circadian rhythm that is very unpredictable. My energy levels are unpredictable. My mental activity is high at times when it seems it would be lower. I am noticing myself, observing myself more often. So I have these periods where it's almost as if I'm watching myself in a movie. And I know that dissociation is actually something that occurs in many different personality, behavioral issues that are based in the brain development, such as bipolar or borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, and that list goes on, as well as complex PTSD, which I have been very open about due to some of the abuse that I experienced throughout my lifetime and throughout past lives as well. And all of those things have become like a whirlpool. And I'm in this whirlpool of energy. And because I am no longer running from these aspects of my human experience, but I seek to be compassionate and empathetic towards myself, more things are coming up to be observed, acknowledged, accepted, without judgment, so that the alchemy can take place. And maybe whoever is listening to me, maybe you can relate to some of these things and you resonate with these words. In order for us to heal these major ancient traumas in which are being held in certain planets, such as Maldek, which holds a lot of the sexual taboos and a lot of the abuse that we see of children, of women. And that list is pretty extensive, but that is provided on Patreon if you would like the full list of the karma that each planet holds in the 9-year prophecy from 2020 to 2029, displaying that map. So we are here to create a revolution of consciousness and a new way of being. And what I have been feeling is the ego is developing wings. The ego is learning how to embody a more enlightened version of him or herself, which means the ego job is to keep us safe. And a lot of us created those maladaptive coping mechanisms in the first 7 to 8 years of our lives, and we continue to use them throughout our life unconsciously. So now the ego, for those of us who are ascending and doing shadow work and self-care, self-love, signing up for courses and programs and learning our astrology, learning our numerology, using tools, working with crystals and sound healing, working with meditations and mantras, learning to use mudras, learning to create potions and tinctures and tonics to help us with certain mind, body, spirit imbalances. For those of us who are doing that work, even if you are not consistent as you would like to be, because of these DNA activations, your DNA is actually helping the ego to become a winged version of itself. And this reminds me of Quetzalcoatl, where this is that serpent energy, their very primal energy that develops wings. And this can be depicted in some ancient mythology and spiritual practices as the dragon, right? Which is very reptilian-like, but has wings. You could even say the phoenix that learns to rise from the ashes of the things that have burned down, the things that are just burnt out, and it turns and alchemizes and is transmuted into something else, something greater. The butterfly that was once just the caterpillar in a cocoon and didn't have a higher perspective of anything, but with time and with the process, wings develop, and now this caterpillar becomes a butterfly and can actually take flight and have a higher perception of things. See, the ego is meant to be our ally. The ego is not meant to be our enemy. It's because of the ego that for those of us who deal with fatigue or pain or depression or just difficulty getting up and getting things done, some of us might be dealing with fear when we leave the home because there's so much chaos in the world. It is the ego that ultimately powers you to push through those things. when we're pushing the limits physically, we're working out, we're being more disciplined, getting to the mat and doing yoga. It is the ego that helps us to get that done. However, it is also the ego that responds in a critical way when we fail and we're not keeping up our routines. When people say things to us that's triggering for us, and we allow that to turn us into nuclear reactors instead of being a creator, exact same letters, just in a different order. The language reveals so much. And so when this is happening, the ego is now in its primal form and having space, taking a pause, taking a breath, using the R team, removing yourself from whatever has become an intense trigger leading you to being a reactor, allows the ego to become winged, taking the time and the space that's necessary to integrate. And once you remove yourself, you can use the PRP and create a positive reframe of what's occurring. Maybe some of you seem to have people in your lives that don't respect your boundaries, and maybe they're newfound boundaries as you're discovering the new needs necessary for you to become a new version of yourself. And maybe you're noticing this, and it is very likely that the universe, which acts as a mirror, and relationships which act as a mirror, are mirroring back to you the years that you spent without boundaries. And so the people close to you may be a reflection of that, because at one point, that's what you were a vibrational match for. That's what you tolerated. And in your tolerance of boundaries being crossed, you were teaching them how to treat you, even if you didn't like the way it felt. If this is happening, I wholeheartedly believe this is a test to gauge your growth by how you respond or react. Some of the ways that we react actually reactivate the old way of being, the old timeline that is a mirror reflection of the old 3D earth, where there was no other dimension of consciousness available for us. And when we do that, we actually crystallize ourselves in stagnant energy. So this doesn't allow us to grow. And that entropy experience in that moment can actually be something that causes us to feel more negative about what's occurring, and we could very easily lash out, project, and blame the person outside of us without taking the time to see, is there anything inside of me that I'm supposed to observe and learn? What are my emotions communicating to me? And maybe your emotions are communicating to you that it's time for you to find a new way to respond that could actually disarm negative chemical reactions, because that's what it is. All of the neurotransmitters and the chemicals that we create and having the cortisol levels that are probably too high for most of us anyway, because we have these extended periods of life where we were just turned on for stress and we became hypervigilant, just scanning everything and everybody that came close to us, trying to make sure that we don't get betrayed, trying to make sure we don't get rejected or abandoned or hurt. Like, these are the programs that hold the 3D matrix system of suffering, ultimately, which creates this prison planet in place. We have become more energetically sensitive. So if someone crosses a boundary, maybe it feels like a 10, but it might actually be a 3. But with the combination of everything that I have discussed up to this point, that could be affecting how intense it feels. Now, I got some good news. The intensity that you feel can be channeled into something really powerful. And we don't always have to know exactly what to do. Sometimes it's just channeling that intensity that we feel. For me, I start sweating. My heart starts beating really fast. My breathing gets shallow and I'm breathing from my chest. Sometimes my head starts to hurt. When I'm having these moments of feeling triggered, my stomach just feels funny. And being someone who is highly sensitive because of traumas and also empathic and intuitive, I experience energies in a more intense way anyway. And so studying myself, studying my emotions, observing what triggers me and what doesn't, what responses to those triggers seem to benefit me and what do not, and journaling those things and creating lists, and I have charts and graphs and maps, and it looks like a mad scientist, but I'm attempting to know myself deeper than I ever have before. And in doing this deep soul work, I find that channeling those moments into going inward, to process, to sit with it, I use it as fuel for the fire of my journey of transformation. Sometimes I might draw or sketch. I may even sketch myself throwing rocks, huge rocks, at the person or the place that pissed me off or whatever. It could be driving on the way home and somebody almost ran me off the road in a blue car. And I would draw that blue car and draw them boulders and drop them on that car. And I would feel better. I'm diffusing the anger that was actually connected to fear of harm coming to me and my loved ones by being driven off the road. And I know that a lot of us who come through religion and then we went into the love and light teachings, and some of us started to study the middle path and left-hand path, and then others of us kind of migrated over to different spiritual systems. I know that there is this connotation that doing things like this is wrong. But again, if you don't process the things that trigger intense emotions within you, you're repressing it. So you either repress or process. And if you repress it and suppress it, you become a minefield that anyone treading around you in your environment could step a certain way and trigger an explosion. And for so many of us, I think that from years of having to repress the anger, especially a lot of us that grew up in certain communities where anger could get you beat up by the police. Anger a response of rage about something, even if it was wrong or injustice, could get you arrested. It could get you shot and killed. Anger at school could lead to you being failed by a teacher. Anger could lead to you going to jail. All of these things, anger and certain types of behaviors could lead to you going to hell for eternity. Like, these are some very terrorizing experiences, especially for children. And we grew up in a toxic society where this was normalized. And a lot of times those that raised us use these things to threaten us, to try to get us to be good and be righteous and be holy and pure and assimilate. And we got lost in that. And a lot of us on the journey of figuring out who we are. So if you went through that love and light phase, or maybe you're still there, then integrating these darker aspects of you repressed in the shadow self will require you to actually embody that and channel that energy somewhere else. Because remember, we are energy in motion. And the OBB challenge that I created to help you create your own out-of-body experiences, out-of-brain experiences, to learn how to observe. Notice all of the OBs that I'm naming. Learning how to observe yourself, learning how to put space in between the trigger and the way that you respond to the trigger. And by rerouting the circuitry of your own board, of the energy that you create, the mandala that you create from day to day, where you walk, where you go, how you're feeling when you're doing it, what you say, and what emotion is attached to that, what you think about and what emotion is attached to that. This changes the mandala. It changes the sacred geometry around you in what we call our aura or our quantum field, morphogenic field. It changes the energy and the symmetry, the sacred geometry around you. And by altering that, you alter the experiences that you have into something that is more authentic to this winged version of yourself. Now, last night, I know this is getting long, but I hope that I am bringing some light into the darkness for someone. So last night, in processing some of my own personal traumas that I recreate in relationships with people, and I kind of cast people into roles so that the subconscious plays out, and in observation, I'm able to see that, oh, okay, this person is my father who wasn't around for this period of my life. Oh, okay, this person represents this particular period in my life. Oh, okay. And so in these aha moments where I'm noticing this, I drifted to sleep, and this is something that it requires a level of vulnerability to share, and I'm doing this because I desire to be the kind of teacher that leads by example. But I drifted into a dream where I was standing in a front yard of a really beautiful neighborhood, but the house in the yard where I was standing had been abandoned, and it had these clouds around it, and clouds were not that low anywhere else in this neighborhood, just around this house. And it felt eerie. And I could see snakes crawling across the windows inside of the house. And I was standing in the yard, and someone walked up behind me as if they were going to walk towards the house and go in. And I warned them and I said, you don't want to go in that house. That house is built with ghosts and a haunting, terrorizing energy. And they kind of looked at me as if they didn't notice until I pointed it out. And I believe that house represents some situations, some people, some things that we have simply outgrown. Maybe some of us tried to make the haunted house a home. Maybe some of us have tried to make it seem like what we were feeling wasn't really what we were feeling and gaslit ourselves into thinking maybe we're just overthinking or, maybe we're just being dramatic and extreme. And I believe that's what that represents. And having the snakes in the house could symbolize a lot of things, but from the feeling that I got from it, it just symbolized the primal reptilian brain that has taken over that house. And so these types of person, places, and things, we want to put more space between us and them. And we want to use whatever boundaries we can possible between us and them as well. Shortly after that, it was kind of like, the ghost that takes the guy throughout different, it comes on every Christmas. I cannot think of the name of it right now. Oftentimes when I'm channeling, I can only see what I am expressing to you verbally, but I can't think of what it is. But it's a Christmas movie and it comes on every year for Christmas. And this is what this was like for me. And so I popped into my truck and I was on the way to a speaking engagement. And I'm on this country road, not much really out there. And out of the blue, I see this windstorm, this whirlwind crossing the highway, probably like half a mile ahead of me. And the winds began to pick up. I turned around. I parked on the side of the road. And I made a decision to change my route, to find an alternate route that was going to be safe to get where I was going. That symbolized the alternate routes that are being given to those of us who desire to live on the new earth. And the new earth consists of more love, more human connection, more vulnerability, less shame, less blame, less fear, less narcissism, less ego strategies to keep ourselves safe that are actually keeping us in a state of entropy. That's the new earth. And we can change our route. No matter how far down the road you have went, you can change it. And it might take more time to get where you're going, but wouldn't you rather get where you're going on a road that is safe? And some of us, in fear of not being able to survive, we created relationships that were not safe. We took jobs that maybe that were not safe and careers that maybe were not really the best thing for us. A lot of those things are changing, and I wouldn't recommend a really quick decision to change and just quit and get divorced and leave people and cut them off, but to use what is being shared in this message that I'm channeling to you and create strategies and create routines that support the person that you are becoming. And this is why in the new verse, you can find so many various programs. They're all very inexpensive to have short periods of time where I teach you different ways of creating these new routes for the new earth. And I always put the links to this in the description. Unless I'm guided to do something different and shut it down and start again, that's going to be there. So take advantage of that. Because these dreams aren't coincidental. It's because of everything that I teach and everything that I do that I'm able to have these lucid dreams in this way, to be able to actually witness what's happening in my subconscious mind. And this was confirmation that my subconscious mind is receiving the new programs, and I am creating a life that consists of safety and people who are emotionally stable and safe to be around. And I've attracted so many beautiful human beings who do not require a lot out of me. They don't ask for more than I can give. They respect my boundaries. They cherish me. They appreciate my gifts and what I have to offer, but they don't treat me like a doormat that they can walk all over. And honestly, all of the experiences that were difficult for me to go through, that made me stronger, that brought me to this point, it's worth it. It's worth it. So don't give up. Whatever road you are on, don't give up. Create your system. Find what works for you. You are the operator. Okay? Nobody else is the operator. And maybe you did give some of your power away. Maybe you were allowing other people to control you. Maybe you did grow up in a family that had this locus of control dynamic for everybody in it, and you notice, and it just does not feel safe and beneficial for you anymore. Maybe that's the truth. And that's okay. Maybe you're supposed to be the first one in your bloodline to say, you know, I'm going to choose me, and I'm going to choose sanity. I'm going to choose my well-being, and I'm going to learn how to create a life that is founded on this. So I think these dreams, and that wasn't the only one, because I had a third dream, which was me being at a concert and running into some people who are part of the old earth, the old timeline of what I needed to get to this point. But what I no longer need to become the new version of myself. And I walked away from these people instead of pretending like everything was okay. And hey, it's so good to see you. How are you? And you know how we put on the beautiful false self avatar mask of the 3D matrix and just hide all of the pain that we feel, and everything in our body is saying alert, alert, alert. Don't engage. And we engage anyway for fear of people thinking that we're cold or mean or different or bad or evil. All of those things, you know. Other people's perception of you has absolutely nothing to do with you, and it's absolutely none of your business. That's their business. That's why it lives inside of their mind. Whatever version of you lives in someone else's mind is their responsibility. Your only responsibility is the version of you that you allow to live in your own mind. And in this moment, I chose me. I chose the version of me that walks away from drama. And I walked away. I had on red and black, which symbolized power. The red also symbolizes the root chakra. So I was creating my safety, and I was protecting my safety. And I got into a red and black. Was it a Camaro or an old school Mustang? It was something that I would love to actually have, right? And so I kind of tripped out when I walked up to the car. I was like, girl, you walking away in style, honey. And you riding off in style. And so I got in, and I felt so proud of myself that I did something my whole life I had been afraid to do. Even while putting myself in situations to try to save people and help people who actually are here to learn how to save and help themselves. And I felt guilty about walking away, but this time I rode off into the sunset. And when I got on the interstate, there were only two ways to go. And there was so much horsepower in that vehicle, I was having a hard time controlling it for a moment. And I was like, okay, mama, you got to slow down, you know. And so I slowed down and kind of got off the gas and just enjoyed the journey. And I chose which way I was going to go. I was going to go left or I was going to go right. And I chose to go right. And the sign going right said Bellevue, which was really interesting. And when I saw the sign saying Bellevue, I knew that it was something that I was familiar with. And so I took that route because though it felt familiar, it felt safe. And it was not something that was just so alien to me, right? And the other way was a word I had never seen before. And I felt like that route was going to take me somewhere that wasn't meant for me. And if you look up the name Bellevue, it has a few things that stand out, but it basically means a beautiful view. And the view of what was ahead of me was something that was going to reflect back to me the beautiful view that I have been creating within myself. So, I hope that this transmission has encouraged and inspired and motivated someone to continue their journey. And I'm going to put a plethora of different things that you can do to help yourself create this new way of being in the description box. And I will also put in the description box the link to Patreon so that you have access to meditations where you actually can walk through portals into a different timeline of experience and so much more. And I have recipes for potions that you could make and use for your self-care or use with your candle work or your petitions. So many things there. And even though I make potions myself, I like to be able to share with people some of the ways that I do that. Because so many of us are practitioners of many different kinds. And we're learning how to actually create the energy that we want to invite into our life. So you'll be able to get access to that, which helps you to attract anything that you desire. It increases your magnetism. And this is how I created the Oshun potion, which was channeled to me, and so many other things. And you even receive all of my metaphysical lectures for free, because all you're paying is a donation to be a part of our VIP tribe. And so many other things there that I can't even talk about here that are on there. So I'm going to put all of those links down there. And, just do not give up. It's okay to take a break. It's okay when you need time and space. But don't give up. There is a beautiful view waiting for you. One love. Ashe. Namaste. New me. Stay.